Hey everyone, welcome to our Friday edition of Teams and live streaming. We are live on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube today. I don't believe I've connected up Teams yet, but that is what we are here to talk about, are some of the options we have for connecting Teams. And one of those options for connecting Teams, we will go through here in a moment. Let me get my information resized here. And let's go ahead and throw this up here. So this is my Office 365 tenant. And if I go down to my Teams environment, we can look at managing teams and the accounts and the teams that I have defined. We have Toastmasters, virtual user groups, and a team DESA. And if I look at the team's policies, you can see that I have the org-wide policy, allowing private channels to be created. We take a look at our update policies. I believe I am now showing preview features in my tenant. And then if we look at the team's templates, we've got all of those turned on. We haven't added any new ones, but all of the team's templates are there. And if I look at our live events policies, we do allow everyone to join live events and always are recording. And this was the setting we looked at earlier in the week that was grayed out because it's set here from an admin perspective. We are always recording live events. And then within the Teams Admin Center, I also have the ability to take a look at the live events settings. I can allow third-party distribution providers. Hive, Collective, and Riverbed are options. I can customize my support URL. I've just used my LinkedIn address for that. And then from a managing apps perspective, we don't have anything specific that we are allowing or pushing out for third-party apps at this point. But if I take a look at some of my options there from, let's see here, from pushing out apps, I can add apps here. And one that I have interest in because a friend founded the company is the Tribute app. So Sarah Haggard, thanks for keeping me informed about what's happening with Tribute. And one of the things that's happened with this mentoring app is I can add it to Microsoft Teams for people within my organization. So I can add Tribute as an app and decide whether I allow users to pin those apps and having these custom apps as well as available within Microsoft Teams. So that's a little bit about the setup for Microsoft Teams from an administrator perspective and some of the things that I might be looking at setting up for my organization. Now let's also take a look at what this looks like from the Teams perspective here. So I'll share that window next. So here we are within my Microsoft Teams environment. And we can come down to my apps that I have available. Find where Tribute was placed. And then also add that in within my tenant. So this would push out based on policy, but I can also add it as a end user. And unmute. There we go. Sorry about that. So here we are within the Tribute app. Let's share this so that people can see it. So we added this in by adding a new app to Teams, and then Tribute shows up over here on the left on my side rail or navigation pane in Microsoft Teams. The organization that I am part of is Microsoft Humans of IT. I can sign in because I already have an account for Tribute, prompting me for credentials. And one benefit to Tribute is that instead of the matching just being based on, hey, I work at this company, or here's my job, or I'm looking for somebody, you get to write your own profile and highlighting what you would like to highlight from a standpoint of your story and your experience. So my story begins way back when I was a young boy. My parents adopted a biracial brother. My brother has a black and a white parent and was adopted pretty much at birth. So I grew up, he's about a year younger than me. I grew up with Timothy. We went to schools together, lived with my parents, and that informed a lot of my experiences at a very young age, and is something that I think of now that it's not as uncommon as it was when I was growing up to see a either biracial couple, biracial family, or situations like that today. So I fill out my profile here within Tribute, and then I have the ability to look at community. There are ways to share updates within Tribute. And just plugging this into Teams means that mentoring aspect of my work would be integral within my company work, and really brings a great example of how Teams becomes a hub for teamwork and for mentoring others and being mentored by others, maybe on your team, maybe from different companies. So Tribute is an application that is available to companies to leverage for these types of mentoring programs, and it plugs right into Microsoft Teams now. Thanks, Sarah, for that update. I really appreciate it. What else today can we discuss about Teams? We looked a little bit yesterday about scheduling the live events. So under my calendar, we can schedule the live events. And then today, as well as yesterday, we're using Restream, which is a fairly new application from my perspective. I hadn't used it before, but allows me to get a sense for what this looks like on more than 3 platforms. And I can even push this out to Microsoft Teams as a live event. So I'd set that up by going to calendar on the far left, the drop down for new meeting, live event. I could set up a live event for now or into the future. So let's say I wanted to set one up for 1:30 today, give it a name. And then this is where I invite the presenters and the producers. I decide what the audience is for my event, whether I'm using an external app like Restream, whether I want Q&A capabilities with my audience. And then as I schedule that and join this meeting, that's where I get my URLs that I can use with Restream. So these URLs are what I use to actually publish to the Teams meeting after I start the meeting. Once you start a stream, you can't stop it. It stops and then it's over with a live stream. And similar to how I've gone live on different platforms, I don't think I scheduled this one today, so it just probably showed up on those platforms as live at 1 p.m. or right around 1 p.m. You can schedule these events so that people are aware of them and that you build up your audience that way as well. So next week, starting on Monday, we will be back to talk about ways to make a career out of this type of work. I have worked as both a Microsoft employee as well as a Microsoft partner doing technical training for over 20 years at this point. And one way to do that training is to get Microsoft certifications and then get your Microsoft certified trainer. And I have had that designation for just over 20 years now. I got my 20-year jacket. It's not here with me, but it's upstairs. It's cool enough out in the Chicagoland area that I could wear that today. And the Microsoft certified trainer community has a lot of the opportunities to teach the types of courses that there are certifications mapped to, whether that's Azure, Teams, SharePoint, Windows, Server, you name it. Microsoft has a number of certifications. And as a certified trainer, anything that I get certified in, I am then qualified to teach. As a certified trainer, I have access to all of the materials to prep for any of those courses, exams, and there are a lot of discounts and other things that I have taken advantage of for over half of my career at this point. I spent over 12 years in total at Microsoft as an employee. So my MCT was something that was provided by my employer, Microsoft, at that time for those 12 years. And then the other remaining, what does that leave, about 8 years, I had either full-time employment for around 5 that paid for my Microsoft certified trainer, or in some of the other cases, I paid for that as an independent trainer running my own company. But the doors that has opened for me have been plenty for even paying for it for 20 years. And going forward, Microsoft Teams not only has team certifications for like the administrators, but there's also a Microsoft designation for service adoption specialists. And I took that course, man, it has to be at least a couple of years now. I took it on the edX platform, and paid to get the certification for the Microsoft Service Adoption Specialist. Part of what I did as taking that course was I created a Twitter list to keep track of people that talked about the course or had also completed the course. We have around 500 people, Twitter accounts, that are on that Twitter list. And then we have just surpassed on LinkedIn with a group for Microsoft Service Adoption Specialists, 400 members. And those are 400 people that, again, have either passed and been certified as Microsoft Service Adoption Specialists, or they have expressed interest in that community. So it doesn't require that you have the credential to be part of that group, but the idea of that group is to discuss things around service adoption. And most of that lens for Microsoft and the course was around some aspect of Microsoft 365, whether that be Teams, whether that be Windows 10, the new versions of the applications that are changing on a regular basis. All of that was wrapped up into that course with video content, learnings, skill checks, and it just recently moved over to Microsoft Learn as a platform. I went back through the course just because it had been long enough that I wanted to brush up on some of the lessons, skills, and discussions that the team at Microsoft had put together for the course. Highly recommended. And you can find a link to it at adoption.microsoft.com. And I'll also look at going out to the various platforms we posted this to make sure you have a link to the course as well. There was another service adoption related discussion I wanted to share with everybody today, and it's escaping me at the moment. Of course, it's Friday, and we're all getting ready for the weekend. So the first thing that I had come across and posted, and I don't think we've discussed here this week, was how do you open a banana? I've published this on LinkedIn a couple of times. And the way I was taught, and my brother learned to open a banana, was from the stem end, the end that the bananas are on. I just bought bananas at the store, and the 8 or so bananas that were in the bundle, I picked up by the stem end. And that's the end I learned to open a banana from. However, if you pinch the bottom or the other end of a banana, it almost peels itself. You're not fighting with the stem. You're not having to use a knife to get something started. And I like that analogy when I think of maybe adopting new software or dealing with software that is changing. Because the way we learned the software, or that we learned to use even a computer, might not be the most efficient way. If you've ever had the opportunity within your career to watch other people use a computer, when you're collaborating with them, when you're working close with them, maybe you're side by side with other people on their laptops before the pandemic, you learn a lot just watching different people and how they navigate to different applications, how they navigate through an application. And let's use Teams as an example. When I first learned Microsoft Teams, I found myself doing this a lot. Over to the left to switch from my calendar to my team, to my chats, back to my calendar, up to activity to see what's happened since I was last here, maybe down to get additional applications or pin them to the navigation pane, looking through the list pane in Teams, looking at the content pane, clicking on things at the top of the content pane to see what was there. And it was just a lot of mouse movements for me. And taking my hands off the keyboard, which is where I might want to be to actually do something within Teams. So once I get to, like this README first, maybe I want to add additional context to this. But what I discovered was, just like other applications, Microsoft Teams has a number and dozens of keyboard shortcuts. And as soon as I discovered this list of keyboard shortcuts, Teams became much more useful to me from a navigation perspective. Instead of having to think about all of the different teams, I already have 4 here, and maybe the order the teams were in and the amount of channels that each team has below it. Every team has a general channel, and then it's up to you to define what the additional channels are. I can hit Control E, and I'm sitting right up in the search in the top middle of the Teams application. And just by learning that Control E as a shortcut has helped me tremendously in navigating Microsoft Teams. The other thing I'll share with you is that Teams and these channels are similar to having folders within Outlook based on either projects or different ways that you organize your incoming messages. However, in Teams, those channels are mutually agreed upon topics or projects or areas that the whole team leverages, not just you as an individual. So as long as we all agree that we should have a downtown meeting folder, because Microsoft Midwest Toastmasters alternated our meetings when we were in person from the downtown Chicago office to the Chicago suburban office, it's as easy as me hitting Control G and typing a little bit of downtown to navigate wherever I am within Teams up to my downtown meeting channel within Microsoft Midwest Toastmasters. Once I learned some of these tricks, like Control G for go to a particular channel, or Control 2 to navigate up to my chat on the far left, these have changed dramatically the way and the efficiency at which I can use the Microsoft Teams application. It's just gone through the roof from a standpoint of being able to navigate. The other thing I love about some of these keyboard shortcuts is how applicable they are to other applications, some of which I knew about and some of which I learned about. For instance, in the navigation area, the Control 1, 2, 3, 4, just marching down the left-hand side of your navigation pane within Teams, those same keyboard shortcuts work within Outlook. So if you're sitting in your inbox and you hit Control 2, guess where you are? You're in your calendar. It's just in a different position by default within Teams. If I want to mirror something similar to like my inbox being my teams and the channels below those teams, and my calendar being 2, then Control 1 is my teams and my channels, and Control 2 is my calendar, just like within Outlook. The other place that those keyboard shortcuts work is your browser. And I learned this from Jen Gentleman. She works for Microsoft and loves keyboard shortcuts just as much as I do. I knew about Control and Tab to move through the tabs in a browser. If I have 4 or 5 tabs open in the window that I'm in Restream, it's the only tab open. But what I didn't realize, if I have 5 tabs open, I can use Control 3 and I'm sitting in the 3rd tab, whatever it is. I don't have to hit Control Tab, 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 Tab to get from maybe the 4th, or Control Shift tab to move backwards through the tabs. I can use Control and number to immediately move to those tabs. So those types of keyboard shortcuts and features have really changed the way that I've been able to leverage not only Teams, but other Microsoft applications just by learning those shortcuts. And again, they're up in the upper right where your picture or your initials are in Teams, and keyboard shortcuts. If you only have time to memorize one keyboard shortcut today, I would recommend you memorize Show Keyboard Shortcuts, which is Control and the period, because it shows this whole list of literally dozens of different keyboard shortcuts organized within the type of work that you do within Microsoft Teams. So if you're in a meeting, for instance, there is a mute toggle for you to leverage within Microsoft Teams. The other thing we will talk about next week is the Microsoft number pads that have come out. Microsoft has released 2 number pads, a white and a black number pads that can be Bluetooth combined to up to 3 devices. So I could use this on a primary Surface device or a OEM computer, and then I can move it between different devices that I use. The buttons, besides being a numeric keypad for entry into like Microsoft Excel or any other application that I'm number intensive on, the keypads can actually be mapped to different applications or uses. And so we might have some use cases that we could think about with live production or leveraging different applitions like Restream, Microsoft Live Events, that type of thing. So we'll look at that next week, the Microsoft number pad. And the keyboard shortcuts for that, I don't have it on my desk right now, but somewhere here, I have a Microsoft dial for the Surface, and I also have a precision mouse that has programmable buttons on the side. And these types of devices allow me to use shortcuts within the applications that I use every day. So we'll look at some of those next week as well. So today we've looked at different ways we could go live with live events. We've taken a look at adding in applications and some of the administrative changes that we can make on Microsoft Teams if we have the administrator functions. And we looked a bit at the Tribute app, which is now available right from within the Microsoft Teams application. I hope you have a great weekend, and I look forward to speaking with you next week. Have a great weekend, everyone.